Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and joining me is LPGA professional Cindy Miller, and we are your hosts. We're broadcasting live every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the blogtalkradio.com network, bringing you some of the best golfers, teacher professionals, and entrepreneurs helping to elevate women's golf. We're so glad you decided to join us this morning, so grab your coffee and let's get started. All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Women of Golf Show. Once again, I'm Ted Odorico, and right alongside is LPGA professional and Legends Tour player Cindy Miller, and we are, of course, your hosts here on the Women of Golf. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Ted. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, considering all that's going on. We were just talking a little bit about that off air, and obviously we're talking about the lovely virus that's upon us, and it's been a little difficult at times. I've actually been hunkered down for several weeks, and it's allowed me an opportunity to get a lot of things done that I need to get done. But it certainly, as I was starting to say, it's the uncertainty of, how much longer this is going to go, and what are going to be the long-term ramifications. But how about yourself?
Same here. Getting a lot of things done, redid a room in the house, creating an online course, and, all kinds of good stuff. So that's what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is, and I try to, and as I'm sure you do, you try to look at the positives from this, and this has given everybody an opportunity to really, kind of hit the pause button a little bit. I think we've all gotten so busy with our lives and so many different things with careers and whatnot that sometimes we forget some of the simple and basic things in life, like family and friends, and this has provided an opportunity to really reach out and connect and even reconnect in some cases. So I try to look at it from that perspective. But anyways, we are going to have a great show this morning. A little bit later on, we're going to be joined by the other half of the Miller team, Cindy's husband, Alan Miller, who is a past champion and a life member of the PGA Tour and PGA Tour champions. And he's going to us on the second half of the show. But once again, Cindy, we are going to enter the no BS zone. And today I thought we would just talk about the 20 greatest women golfers of all time. And there is quite a list. And I got to be honest with you, and I know I didn't send this to you, so I apologize, I forgot. So I will have to sort of fill in some of the blanks. But what was interesting about some of the women on the list, I'm going to start from the highest down to what they rank as number one. And this was actually put out back in around this time in 2018. So there may have been some slight changes, but I think it's pretty solid. But what was interesting, and we can talk about it a little bit more in a bit, is that there didn't seem to be any definitive reason why the players got in the way they did. It wasn't based on the most majors won or even most tournaments won, because there, and as I said, as we get into the conversation, there's some that won more majors, but maybe less tournaments overall, and vice versa, and yet ranked higher or lower depending on the circumstances. So it was a very odd connection. But anyways, so number 20 was Sandra Haney, who I'll be honest, I'm not real familiar with.
And
she was a four-time.
Haney.
Yeah. Well, that's why I thought
I'm going to get her on the show.
Because, yeah, let's get her on.
There you go.
But she won 4 majors, including the 65 and 74 Women's PGA Championship. She won the 74 U.S. Women's Open and the 1982 Du Maurier Classic, which of course is a tournament I used to watch all the time. She had 42 victories on the LPGA, Cindy. But what was interesting is, much like many of our young players that we've had come on here from the Symetra Tour, she started very, very young. She was 18 years old, when she joined the LPGA in 1961, and she actually won her first time at the age of 19. So the very next year. So she came up very quick and won her first victory. And then from 63 to 75, she finished every season inside the top 10 on the money list. So she was quite a powerhouse. So if you've got something, share a story or maybe just some thoughts about Sandra.
Oh,
keep it clean.
I love her. I will. So she is as chill as it gets. If you don't understand disc behavior styles, these are competitive control freaks in Tiger Woods. I's are Chi Rodriguez at Lee Trevino and Christina Kim and love to talk. S's are steady, and that is Sandra Haney. And C's are conscientious and very detail-oriented. But Sandra Haney, and S's make the best tour players, and that's what I married, who's going to be on the show in 30 minutes. But Sandra Haney and I had to do a thing for the Legends Tour, a clinic. And Sandra Haney doesn't do anything fast. And she's just so smart. So it's funny because D's and S's are total opposites. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's hit the ball. And, because I'm a D and she's an S. And she's like, now let's just try to do this first. And let's try to get this under control. And so I just love her to death. Every time I see her, she just smiles because she knows, I'm a wacko. And no, she's awesome. In fact, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to get her on the show. She is so good. She just swings and hits the ball and swings and hits the ball. And, I mean, that's what Alan Miller does. It's just, she's great. I love her. So, okay, next.
Well, we'll definitely have to. No, that's okay. We'll definitely have to. Now, this one kind of surprised me for a specific reason. I mean, not that she's on the list, but Lorena Ochoa. She won 2 majors and 27 LPGA victories. But what was surprising about this was the fact that she retired so very early and so young. I mean, really at the top of her game. My opinion, I was kind of surprised at that because in my opinion, I think she had a lot of great golf left out on the tour, and I was really surprised when she announced back in 2010. And obviously, I know she wanted to start a family, but I don't know. What are your thoughts there? I mean, do you agree with that?
Well,
I mean, everybody has their own time.
Yeah. Yeah. If you know anything about or have witnessed Lorena Ochoa, she's a high S. High S's are very shy and quiet and steady and don't like the limelight. They're introverts. She got married. She wants a family, has a family. It's like, I don't want this lifestyle. I mean, and that's the same thing with Annika. To be the best in the world at what you do, if it's a professional sport, you have to adapt your behavior so much if you're a high S or C, because they're introverts and they don't want the limelight. So how long can you be someone you're not? And that's why they're like, I'm out of here. Now, Annika, and they both have foundations. They both help people, but they aren't in the news all the time. And people aren't, well, how did she play this week? Why did she miss the cut? What's wrong with her swing? And, so I commend them.
Well, and I agree. I mean, you have to go in your own time, and obviously she had other things that she wanted to do. I think, maybe it's from a selfish perspective, I guess, as fans of these players, you get excited when you see them having, some incredible, seasons out there, and then all of a sudden, wait a minute, what do you mean she's retiring? And you're thinking you've got so much great game left. And I think it's almost from an envious standpoint too, because you kind of think, well, gosh, if I had your game, I'd be out there cleaning up for the next 20 years. But you're right. I mean, if you're an introvert and you're somebody that's extremely shy, you don't want to really be in the limelight. You enjoy the game and you enjoy the challenge of it, but you really don't care about, the other stuff, being, having a microphone shoved in your face, week after week, and, asking, well, why didn't you do this and why didn't you do that? And so I can understand, I guess, from that perspective. All right, number 18 is Meg Mallon, who I always enjoyed watching her. She won 4 majors and a total of 18 LPGA victories. And she joined the LPGA in 1987 and had a really, a breakout season in 91, winning 4 times, and 2 of them happened to be majors. And she was also played a number of years on the Solheim Cup, in fact 8 times, and then served as the assistant captain in 2009, and then became a team captain in 2013. Any thoughts or stories that you want to share about Meg?
Well, again, both Meg and Beth Daniel, which I pulled up the list, so I can see that Meg is 18 and Beth is 16, and they're good buddies, and they don't want to play anymore. And so You'll find this, I find it strange, because once you've reached the highest levels of both playing and possibly teaching, these two don't teach. They love their life.
Yeah.
Beth hits balls all the time. She loves to hit balls, which, again, high S. Alan Miller loves to hit balls. They don't want to play. They do not play in any Legends Tour events, and they could play every time if they wanted to. So I found that so odd, because I'm like, what do you mean you don't want to play? How could you not want to play? But they're sick of it. Alan Miller doesn't play. If he gets up at boot camp and hits a shot, I'm like, whoa, let's videotape this. So
we'll ask him about. I'm going to ask him about that. Why he doesn't want to play. We'll ask him when he comes on. But
he
you're
doesn't care, and it almost seems negative. And when I hear his answer, I'm like, wow, you're like bitter. He's not bitter. He's done. He doesn't want to play. I'm like, okay.
Right.
And neither does Meg or Beth. And so here's what we need to understand, that they've reached levels that we've not reached.
Right.
And they're done.
Right.
There you go.
Right,
so,
exactly.
I love both of them, and I can see who the next one is. Go ahead. I'll shut up.
Yeah. Betsy Rawls, who won 8 majors, including the 51, 53, 57, and 60 U.S. Women's Open, and had a total career victories on the LPGA 55. And, she, I think, was obviously I'm not as familiar with Betsy, but, again, just incredible when you look at some of the stats that these ladies have put up on the board. And she also tied at one point with Patty Berg in stats, and I don't know a lot about her, so I really can't add too much here. But I just just amazing when you look at their overall records. 69 Women's PGA Champion as well as the U.S. Women's Open, and 52 and 59 Western Open. So a lot of majors there. What are your thoughts?
She was awesome too. Again, I'm very grateful, because I've met in person, and some I know better than others, but Betsy Rawls would know who I am, so she's awesome as well. And again, another S. I'm learning something here, Ted.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, I want to well, that's the point. I'm a firm believer. We're obviously doing this show, which is geared and to really foster the growth of the game for women. And I just thought this would be a great discussion to have, and just to talk about and sort of showcase some of these, in my opinion, these legends of women's golf. And many of them, not all of them, but many of them I watched, as I was growing up, play and obviously later in life. But number 16, as you already mentioned, was Beth Daniel. Now, she only won 1 major, which was the 1990 Women's PGA Championship, but she had 33 overall victories, and became a member of the Hall of Fame. And what was really interesting about this, she won the 2003 Canadian Open at age 46, a very Nicklaus style, if you will. She became the oldest winner in tour history. You know, which is not an easy feat when you get a lot of these young players coming up and challenging, you know, your records, and you go out at age 46 and you beat the field. That's an accomplishment in itself, because it's not always easy, as you know, Cindy. Oh yeah, I loved watching. I mean, you know, again, I'm surprised that she didn't win more, particularly more majors, because she did have an incredible golf swing. But again, nothing to sneeze at when you look at her overall records. But yeah, just a solid player, and you know, I miss, you know, players like that, you know, out on the LPGA tour. Number 15 was Siri Pak, 5 majors, including the 98, 2002, 2006 Women's PGA Championship. She won the 98 Women's Open and the 2001 Women's British Open. Overall, 25 tour victories. And she was really, you know, they talk about here, she was a pioneer of women's golf, and really credited with changing the face of golf. Back in 98, of course, when she joined the LPGA, she was, you know, she won 2 majors, but she was the only Korean player at the time on tour. And here we are, you know, 10 years later, well, probably 12 years now, there's 45 at that point on the LPGA tour. So, and also she was the youngest to qualify for the World Golf Hall of Fame, which surpassing Kari Webb as the youngest, you know, living entrant. So, you know, a lot of great stacks, and she was a very, very solid. I remember watching her many, many times. An incredibly solid player, especially her short game. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely awesome. I don't know her, but yes, great.
Yeah, yeah, she just was a really, really good player, and I think they put it quite right. She really did. You know, what was interesting about that time in women's golf is obviously really the 2 main lines of competitors were either American players or European players, and she really opened up the market to other areas that typically, certainly not that they weren't playing golf in their regions, but not to the same level. And when she came on, and especially when she did what she did, you know, 5 majors and many wins and getting into the Hall of Fame, it really opened the door for a lot of young women in Korea and other areas, you know, in the Asian belt, if you will, and said, hey, you know, this is something that I can do, or I'm excited about. And, you know, the rest is history. I mean, there came a point in time where it seemed it was almost like the Asian tour for a while, because there were so many coming in, young women coming in and playing, and they started to, in a lot of ways, at times, started to almost dominate for a while. So very, very interesting. I'm again not real familiar with, you know what I'm saying? It's just she really opened the door to a global game. 14 was Amy Alcott, 5 majors again, U.S. Women's PGA Championship and Women's Open, and her rookie year in '75 won her first tournament as a professional in just her 3rd start. And just, again, a great season. And I remember, I think I've shared this story, but I remember back a few years ago, I was interviewing Shirley Spork on Golf Talk Live, and she said, you know, after probably about 40 minutes in the discussion, she says, well, I got to go. It's Amy Alcott's birthday. And that was it. And the interview was over. And I'll never forget that. And I thought, okay. It was just, you know, typical Shirley Spork style, but it was just funny. Just, I mean, it abruptly, just, well, I got to go. It's Amy Alcott's birthday, and I'll never forget that. It was quite humorous at the time. But again, 5 major tournaments, 29 victories overall in the LPGA Tour. Here's a player, Cindy, that I always really, really enjoyed watching, and she was one of a few that were really, I put in the category of feisty, and that's Julie Inkster, number 13. 7 major championships, U.S. Women's Opens, PGA Championships, Demore Classic, so on. And, of course, she went on to captain the Solheim Cup. and just a really great 31 victories overall in the LPGA Tour. Any thoughts on Julie Inkster?
I agree. She is feisty. But she's awesome. She's absolutely awesome.
Well,
I think
she's just
get out of the way. I'm going to win.
And she's still,
and she's really
I believe,
the one. Yeah, she still plays. So she's one of the few on this list that has that feisty word.
Yeah. And
I'm
there's
not
one
saying
I'm going to
the rest
mention
of them aren't competitive, but go ahead.
Right, but she was just really and somebody else that came up to mind and is not on this list, and I was really kind of surprised, was Dottie Pepper. Dottie Pepper won 17 tour victories. Certainly not as many as some of the others on the list, but she was another player I always put in that feisty category. They were just very, very,
oh, for sure.
I would say hyper competitive, and of course she's on
Suzanne Pedersen, another one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to just forgive me, but I'm going to speed up just a little bit, just be mindful of time. But Louise Suggs, number 12, 11 majors and 61 victories. And of course, she, as most of you know, the history of the game, was one of the founding members of the LPGA, along with Shirley Spork and, of course, late Marilyn Smith. But just and got into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 1979. So. And also in the LPGA Tour Hall of Fame, which was established back in 1967. Any quick thoughts on Louise?
Loved her. Again, awesome. Used to play her clubs. She's great.
Yeah, she's just was a real force at the time on the LPGA Tour, and I know many people are very grateful for her, and of course the other founders as well. Number 11 is Patty Sheehan, 6 major wins, 35 victories. Again, a very solid, not a real, in my opinion, a really overly aggressive player. I mean, aggressive to a point, obviously, because you've got to, be somewhat aggressive to win, but not just a sort of maybe I'm wrong, but sort of a steady player. What do you think about that? Was that pretty accurate, do you think, or? Yes,
love her. I'm going to get her on the show.
Okay. Number 10 was Patty Berg, 15. And this was one that surprised me. 15 major wins, including 46 U.S. Open. Won the Western Open many times, as well as the Title Holders Championship, which was at that time the name of the major, but 60 wins overall. I was really surprised that she wasn't a little higher up in the list, given as many majors and 60 wins overall. But obviously has been a great force in golf, and also she volunteered for the U.S. Marine Corps and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in 1942. In the Marine Reserves from 42 to 45. So in addition to being a great player, she was also serving her country. So just a great lady overall. Pat Bradley is next on the list. 6 major wins, number 9 on the list, LPGA victories were 31 over top. And again, Women's PGA Championship was among the majors, and U.S. Women's Open, also the Des Moines Classic that she won 3 times. She won the. She was one of, I guess, to complete the LPGA's career Grand Slam, and she also won the Nabisco Dun Ashore LPGA Champions, which was 3 of the 4 majors at that time. So, just a great player as well. Betsy King. Sorry, I didn't mean to be speeding on, but I want to move on so we're not late with Alan. Betsy King. 6 majors, LPGA victories 34. Again, just a great player. Any thoughts there?
No, just awesome. I am surprised at
Kari
this
Webb.
list. I'm looking at it real quick. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Kari Webb, 7 major championships, 41 victories, and one of the most active, certainly on the tour. She's just been, just a real powerhouse, and one that's really I would say, a little bit more aggressive in her play than some of the others that we've mentioned. And again, they're all well-accomplished players, but some were a little bit more subdued, I guess, or subtle on the field. But Kari was always went for it. It seemed, and just was a great player. Joanne Carner, I'm not real familiar with her. I did watch her over the years, but I'm sure you might know her a little, obviously, better. But major wins too, both U.S. Women's Open, and 43 victories overall in the LPGA. And
yep, and she just had her 81st birthday. I love Big Mama.
Wow.
She came to our wedding.
There you go. That's something else that should be on the list. Nancy Lopez is one of my favorite players. In the number 5 spot, won 3 majors, 48 victories overall, and her majors were the Women's PGA Championship in 78, 85, and 89. Her first season, of course, was in 78, and was just a really. I always equated her, and I know they had a very close friendship, but I always equated her as the Arnold Palmer of women's golf. She just had such a great way about her. Was an incredible ambassador. I mean, when you look at her stats compared to, certainly, again, nothing to sneeze at, but when you compare them to some of the others on the list, she wasn't as, as big of a winner as some of the others, but she just epitomized, in my opinion, that ambassadorship for the game. She's just done so much and continues even this day, giving back with so many different charities and things that she's involved with. This one here, of course, which is a side note, in addition to winning 6 majors and 88 LPGA victories, she was our very first guest on the Women of Golf show. And of course, I'm talking about Kathy Whitworth. She's been on actually a couple times now, but she is just, again, and that was the more victories than she actually 6 more than Sam Snead's record of 82 on the PGA. She was the first player in LPGA history to reach the $1 million mark in career earnings. So lots of great accomplishments, and she's just so giving of her time. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I'm surprised she's not higher on the list, to be honest with you.
Well, when I said at the very beginning, at the top of that segment, I said to you that there were kind of some surprises. I thought she would have been a little bit higher up, and it just kind of didn't make sense. And here's a good point. And so I'm not sure what the gauge was for this, but the next on number 3 is Babe Saharias. Won 10 majors, including again Women's Open, and 41 victories. She was obviously an incredible player, and won 2 gold medals in track and field in the 1932 Olympics. But I was surprised at that. I mean, she's won 4 more majors than Kathy, but about half as many or less than half as many overall victories. So it just, I wasn't really sure what the barometer or measuring stick, if you will. Number 2 was Mickey Wright. Again, 13 majors, 82 LPGA victories, so I could certainly understand why she would be up in this list. Won 3 U.S. Women's Opens, 59, 61, and 64. And interesting side note, Ben Hogan said of Wright's swing that it was the best he had ever seen. And she just was second all-time behind Patty Berg's record of 15 majors. And then, of course, the number 1, Cindy, that you've already had mentioned, Annika Sorenstam, major wins 10, including the Women's Open, the Women's British Open, PGA Championship, and others, and was the winner of record 8 times Player of the Year awards and 6 VAR trophies. Just an incredible, and again, very much like Lorena Ochoa decided, it's time for a family, and I'm going to exit golf in this capacity as a player, and just had had enough, and decided to do other things. Is still involved in golf in other ways through her academy and foundations and so forth, but just decided that was what she was going to do. What are your thoughts here?
Again, I want to have children and give back to the game and help other girls and women get, enjoy and master the game of golf. So God bless her. I don't blame her. Again, let me just say one thing. When Tiger Woods, I think it was 2000, at the Canadian Open, and again, Alan, my husband, is a lifetime past champion of the PGA Tour, so we can go anywhere. We get credentials as if, I get the wives pin and the money clip, or he gets the money clip. And so we took the kids to the Canadian Open, and we were waiting for Tiger to come out of the locker room to come and hit balls. And when he came, all the people that were around him, Jamie's mouth, we have 3 children, but he's the player. He's the middle one.
Right.
His mouth dropped open, and he's like, oh, my gosh. I mean, it was like, what is life like for this guy, right? He can't go anywhere without anyone recognizing him. So when you are that much of a star, now, again, it's more for Tiger Woods than it would be for Annika. Annika could go to the grocery store in Buffalo, and, most people wouldn't know who she is. But when you're not looking for the limelight and you achieve, all of your goals, it's time to be done and do something else. And God bless her.
Yeah. Yeah. I often wonder, and I just wonder sometimes, and then we'll wrap up, when you get to that level, when you have that competitive fire and those competitive juices running, if there isn't a point, and I know you're probably going to say or have the answer to this, but I wonder if some of these players that have sort of exited, like Lorena and like Annika, if those competitive fires are still there, and if they miss that competitiveness, or is there other juices flowing, if you will, or competitive or desires overtake that, overshadow it at some point? Is that kind of what happens, do you think, that they just, while they're in the hunt, they're highly competitive, but then there comes a point in time where it kind of fades?
Their motivators. It depends on what motivates them to action. And, needless to say, most of our listeners understand or know that I'm certified in behavior and motivation, and we do a lot of corporate training. And I'm motivated economically. Now, that doesn't mean that everything I do has to have a money sign, a dollar sign, by it. But what it does mean is, so let's talk about the U.S. Women's Senior Open. Now, Annika didn't play. Well, why wouldn't she play? Well, I don't think she's 50 yet, but will she play when she's 50? Well, they have to stop and say, why do I want to get up off the chair and go hit balls? How much time and energy is it going to take? Because and I know that even if you're a superstar, you've got to practice, right? So you weigh the work with the weight and the win. And am I willing to do that? Why do I have to do that? What am I going to get out of it? And I'm not saying that that's what she's motivated by. So others are motivated by helping other people. And it would be interesting to find out what their motivation ranking is. There's 7 different motivators. But clearly, Lorena and Annika must be motivated altruistically, which is helping other people. Annika does a great job with her foundation. So, again, they got to stop and say, why am I hitting balls, and do I really want to do this, and do I need the money? Again, I do it because I needed to prove to myself the dream I had when I was 17 years old wasn't just a nightmare that would haunt me. So it was worth it to me to get out and hit balls. But to others, they're like, what are you, crazy? Well, I would never do that. So we judge because what motivates them is not what motivates us. So I'm done.
Well, no, that's fine. And we're basing it on obviously what we see, visually on television. We see them out there competitive, and then all of a sudden it kind of, and it doesn't really in this way, but it seems to us, after however many years, it kind of comes to a screeching halt, and you're kind of sitting here scratching your head. Well, wait a minute, you're still, you're number 1, number 2, or what have you, or you're still highly competitive in the top 10 every week. Why would you want to stop that? So it's hard for us to understand. But again, we're not inside. We're not, in their mind thinking, they're probably at the point saying, "Oy, no, I can't do another week. There's other priorities in my life." It's interesting too. Just a quick note, and then we'll bring Alan out. Is I remember an interview several years back when the Champions Tour was first sort of breathing life, and Jack Nicklaus was hitting that point. He was asked about that very thing. Are you going to come out on the Champions Tour? And really, I was surprised as competitive and that as he was, that he was really hesitant about wanting to make that commitment. And obviously Arnold Palmer, I think, was instrumental in because they were trying to get the tour going and wanted to have some big names out there to really ignite a fire. But his initial thought was, I've played a lot of golf and I love golf, but there's other things in my life, and he wasn't really keen on. Now I know he did come out and compete in that, but I don't think he really enjoyed it as much as what people might think. And that's just my thought. I'm not in his head, and I haven't had personal conversations with Jack, but that was, I remember watching that interview, and I was really surprised at that with this competitive fire that he has had over his career, that he was really not that excited about getting out on the Champions Tour at that time. Now, it may have changed that viewpoint later on, but it was interesting. Great segment. I enjoyed going over it, and as I'm sure you were, I was surprised at some of the people on the list and surprised that some others weren't on that list. But we're going to bring Cindy's other half, Alan, on the show. He is, as we mentioned, he's a past champion, life member of the PGA Tour and PGA Tour Champions, ranked number 2 in America, amateur in America in '69 and 1971. He was a member 1969 and 71 of the Walker Cup team, and 1970 the Eisenhower World Cup team. Competed in over 15 major championships, including 5 Masters. And he is the second purest ball striker ever tested by short game guru Dave Pelz. And he is also author of Short Game Bible and the Putting Bible. So let's welcome Cindy's partner, Mr. Alan Miller.
Good morning, dear.
We're partners, huh? Good. I'm glad to hear that. Now we have to get that mixed team for old farts going.
Yeah,
well,
as Alan would say, I would be like, "Oh, you're going to hit balls," and he goes, "Hey, it doesn't take long for a Rolls Royce to warm up."
Hey, by the way, we won one of those before. Remember that?
We did.
So let me start off, if you
go ahead.
If you don't mind, because I know you get to chat with Alan every day. Welcome, first off, Alan. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We were talking. Thank you. We were talking in the first segment. About sort of the desire to play and when we were going over the top 20 list of women golfers of all time. And Cindy made a comment that was kind of interesting, and I just want to get your perspective on this, is there came a point in time where you really didn't enjoy playing as much. Why was that? What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, I was listening to this last segment, and go back just real quick to Nicklaus and Arnold. They're two different types of personalities. Jack had already proven everything he needed to prove in golf. He had nothing more to prove in playing the game, and he was more of a quiet person. He's a nice guy, but didn't like the limelight per se, jumping around with crowds and stuff. Where Arnold thrived on the people screaming and yelling in the background, and he wanted to be out amongst them all the time. Both of them had proved they were great players, but Arnold still liked the accolades and all the other stuff, where Jack couldn't have cared less that way. So that when you get to a point like that you don't need that certain thing in your life, you move on to something else. I was the same way. The satisfaction of me playing good was vitally important, but as far as getting the pat on the back because you played great, I didn't need that. I remember one time up here, a guy asked me at a club, from a club a kid that I was teaching from a club, said, "Hey, I got a guy that wants to bet me $10,000 that the club champion can beat you if you went out and played. Will you take the straight in the eye?" And I said, "No." I said, "Number one, I have nothing to prove. I've already been to the top where that guy will never go, and I have no need to prove that anymore. Now, could he beat me? I maybe have. Who cares? Couldn't have cared less. But I'm not going to put myself through that frustration." Well, I don't think Jack really cared about, why should I keep practicing? I've worked on this all my life, and I want to do other things in life, like you said, and I don't need the accolades of the people yelling at me in the background. So I think that makes a big difference. I was never one to need the crowd I didn't have the crowd yelling at me that much anyway. But once you're done, you're done. Use the example of, my dad was a doctor, or a lawyer, whatever. once they retire, they don't go back to see if the office is still there. Some people do go continue on in their profession a little bit on the side, but most people, when they retire, they don't go back to the office, and that's kind of the way I looked at it, and it's kind of the way I'm sure Jack kind of felt about it.
Would it be fair to say, Alan, real quick, and then Cindy, I know you probably have some things that you want to talk about, but would it be fair to say that you would have been just as happy playing in that competitive round, but with no crowds?
Oh yeah. The game, my satisfaction from the game was not the accolades; it was from the personal satisfaction of hitting good shots, and it didn't matter, where it was, or excuse me, it didn't matter where it was, or what tournament it was, or anything else like that. I was kind of like Ben Hogan. Ben Hogan would rather stay on the range for 6 hours, and playing was just a necessity. Right. I mean, you can't win tournaments, you can't make money playing, but the real satisfaction came from just standing there hitting balls and trying to hit perfect shots or good shots and perfecting whatever you did. So I was more that way, and I didn't need the playing part, so it was easier for me to step away in that respect. Yeah,
it's interesting because, when I think of some of the players, when you say that, and I think of some of the players over the years that, particularly on the men's tours, that really played to the crowds. Of course, Arnold Palmer is first and foremost, but, another player was Lee Trevino. I think without the crowds, I mean, he played to the crowds and
exactly.
Actually to the detriment of Nicholas, because I remember Nicholas.
Well,
that's
the way Chichi Rodriguez was that. Right. Chichi Rodriguez was the same way. I mean, they were more entertainers, as much entertainers as they are golfers, and that takes a special personality to do that.
Right, exactly. Well said, Cindy. Go ahead.
Hello. I've got my talking points right in front of me. In other words, I'm well prepared if you want to ask some talking point questions.
You want to know?
All right, I'm gonna go right there. Talking points. Go ahead.
He reads directions.
First talking point on the sheet from Ted and Cindy was this, ladies and gentlemen: best tip you ever gave, and then the second was the best tip you ever received. And I'm gonna tell you what, they're one and the same. And the best tip that I ever received, backtracking, was from Big Mama Joanne Carner, who you're talking about in the last segment. And we were down in Corning, New York at the Corning Classic before we got married, and Cindy was playing. And my game on the PGA Tour, I got to the point in my career where I could not hit a green with a sand wedge from 50, 60, 70 yards. I was still good around the edges of the greens and still good out of bunkers, but I could not get it on the green to save my life. And my friends would turn their head every time they saw me have to have a 50 or 60-yard wedge shot so they didn't have to watch. In fact, it got so bad that I was hitting 6 irons on second shots on par 5 so I could have a 125-yard shot on the green rather than trying to get it close enough to hit a wedge if I couldn't reach the green, which I couldn't do that often. So anyway, Joanne was playing. We watched her play after Cindy had played, and she hit some great wedge shots from around the greens, and I went, wow. But I saw her top about 3 or 4 fairway woods, 5 woods, 5 hybrid. I didn't have hybrids in, but 5 woods, 3 woods off the fairway. So anyway, she said, would you and Cindy like to come over and barbecue with us tonight? We'll cook some steaks out by our trailer, because even though they had a lot of money, again, going back to the other segment, things people like to do and why you would quit, they like to pull a trailer. So we went over their trailer, and they cooked some steaks, and while we were cooking the steaks, Joanne said, hey, Alan, would you mind watching me hit a few fairway woods? And I said, of course I'd watch you. So she got up and she took out her 5 wood, and she dead topped it about 3 in a row. And I looked at her and I said, Joanne, what in God's name are you trying to do with that 3 or 5 wood, whatever it was? She said, looked at me right in the eye, and she said, well, obviously I'm trying to get it in the air. I can't get it in the air. I said, Joanne, do you try to get that wedge of yours in the air? And she said, no. I said, well, I want you to walk up and just pretend you have that wedge in your hand and make a full swing like it's a 70-yard wedge shot. And she got up and she launched that hybrid, or a 5 wood, or a 3 wood again, whatever it was, hit a perfect golf shot. She said, really? That's all I got to do? I said, yeah. So then I said, hey, by the way, Joanne, will you watch me hit a couple wedges? Because I've tried everything. One person's telling me to hold the angle, and the other person's telling me to rotate through, blah, 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 blah. She said, yeah, I'll watch it. So I got up, and I dead sideways a couple of wedges in a row, one way right, one way left, and she almost started laughing. And I said, what I do, Joanne? She looked at me, and she said, Alan, back at you. She said, I know you're one of the best drivers on the PGA Tour. Walk up and pretend you have that driver in your hand and make a full swing and just let it go. And I said, really? So I walked up with my sand wedge, made a full swing, hit it 70 yards, perfect straight shot, and I've been a good wedge player ever since. So that was by far the best tip I've ever received. But to go back to the other one, the best tip you ever gave. And I've done that a couple of times, but just recently, while I was working with Chelsea D'Antonio, who you've had on the show before, who's trying to get her game in the next level for the tour possibly someday. And we were working on, I was watching her swing, and there's one little part of this backswing was really bugging me and why she would come across the top so much. And I just went, oh. Then I compared while we were sitting in Orlando at the last boot camp when she was visiting with us. And they're all gone to bed, and I'm watching on my iPad, and I'm saying, there's something here that's holding her back from being able to duplicate what she does, what I'm trying to get her to do, blah, blah, blah. So I put her driver swing, or driver on fairway wood swing next to a 5 or 6 iron it was, and I went, oh my God, that's all it is. So I told her the next day, I said, I want you to walk out and pretend you got your driver in your hand when you got that 7 iron in your hand, and immediately the backswing that we'd been working on looked exactly like I wanted it to do, and she wasn't coming over it anymore. So the mind plays tricks on you, and it tries to make you do things with certain things that you don't need to do, or when you get scared and you try to help it. So for the best tip I've ever given somebody else, it was Chelsea, and it works. I've done it other times before too, but it really works. You know, how many times you heard somebody say, well, my 7 iron is my favorite club, but I hate my 5 iron.
Right.
Well, that's all in their head.
Right.
The swing's the same no matter what club it is, but when you get that kind of reaction in your subconscious mind, you're going to try to help it, and it can hurt you not make a good swing. So, you know, either way, it worked for me, it worked for her, and I think people need to say, you know, if I don't like a club, hit one shot with that club, but go back to the one you like the most and see if you can just duplicate whatever it feels like to you when you do it. Just pretend. Trick that mind into doing something you can be successful. You've already been successful doing it. You can have a lot more success with the ones that scare you the most.
Yeah, and that really goes to, well said, Alan, that really goes to prove the point that golf is really in your head, because, you know, so many people get out, you see them out in the range, and they're tinkering around with how they're hitting the ball and this and that and the other, and a lot of times they get out there, and then when they transition to the first tee, it's like the person that was hitting those great shots on the range suddenly disappeared or went home. And they're doing all kinds of things. So it's really very interesting and a great point that you made. Cindy, go ahead.
So let me jump in on that. If I were to ask, when I hear somebody say, you know, I can do it on the range, but I can't do it on the course, or I can make a good swing when the ball's not there, but I can't do it when the ball's there, what's the real problem? Well, the real problem is the ball or the course, not whether you can do it or not. Okay, if you can make a good swing, you can make a good swing whether there's a ball there or not, if you can stay focused on what you're doing. But so many times we let either the ball overtake us, kind of the ball can win, or we try to perform on the course and can't precision motion that we've been working on the range. So it's not whether you can do it or you can't do it. It's whether you do it or you don't do it. And that's a big issue for most people and most golfers, including tour players.
Right, exactly. Cindy?
Okay, bunker play. So, yeah, I mean, our daughter Kelly calls it. She says I'm a good bunker outer. So, tell us how you practice getting out of greenside bunkers and why you're so good at it.
Well, way back when I was like 12 or 13 years old, the club pro at my club at Pensacola, Florida, Pensacola Country Club, was a Canadian. He'd been there for a long time before. He was an old man, but like I am now. And he was a great bunker player, so he helped me learn how to hit a bunker shot. And main thing he says, don't be scared of the sand. The sand's your friend. You have to let the club go into the sand and just let it splash through the sand. Don't try to dig it out. But he said, Alan, you're going to have to stay in here for hours and hours to get good at it. Once you get good at it, you'll never lose it, but you got to practice it. Well, we had a perfect place to practice it at my club there, so I could just go out, and my dad would drop me off the course in the morning, and I'd stay there all day. And I just in the bunker for hours and hours and hours. And, you know, again, once you learn it, you never lose it. But the problem I have with sand shots for most people, and Cindy knows I hate to teach that at the golf schools, that we do, because I know people will not spend the time they need to get adequate at it or get really good at it. Just the nature of the beast. And if they're not going to practice it, there's no need in worrying about it. Just accept you're not going to be a decent bunker player. You can't be afraid of the sand. The sand is your friend. Sand gets between the face of the club and the ball rides out on a bed of sand. But you have to work on it, and you have to practice it to overcome that fear and that urge. I'm sitting in the car outside of Silver Creek right now, and when there's 4 feet of snow in my driveway, my urge is to get out of the driveway is to gun it. And I know if I gun it, I'm just going to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. So I've learned over the years just to try to ease the car out of the snow and get it loose. Same as in Florida, trying to drive on the beaches. You know, if you just gun it out there, you're going to dig deeper and deeper. You have to slowly take off in the sand, and you let some sand out or some air out of the tires to flatten the surface. Well, that's what bounce on a wedge is for. And letting the air out of the tires is going to give you more mass to go through the sand, so it doesn't dig. It's not a sharp edge, and that'll help you get out of drive on the beach. Well, same thing with sand wedge. It's already built to help you, and you can take your sand wedge and just kind of let it fall into the sand and watch it. It'll just kind of splash the sand and kind of slide through it. It won't dig at it. But if you try to just slam it in there, it's just going to dig a deep hole. So that is because a lot of it, again, goes back into your head. It's not technique. It's how you learn to use the technique. And to be able to develop, you got to practice it.
Great tip, Alan. Thank you.
Now, I'm looking on my sheet here, and they say fairway bunker.
No.
The hardest shot in
no.
The hardest shot in golf is a 50 or 60-yard wedge shot out of a bunker. Okay, that's the hardest shot in golf. The second shot, in my opinion, the second hardest shot in golf is a fairway bunker. Now, the technique on a fairway bunker is no different than a normal golf shot. Basically, you got to try to anchor your feet a little bit so you don't slide. But the problem is you've got to catch it dead perfect. Okay, you just like playing 0-0 on a roulette wheel in Vegas. You're going to hit it every now and then, but your odds of hitting it are slim, way slimmer than if you bet on the red or the black. Well, a fairway bunker, as a tour player like myself, will do anything we can to stay out of a fairway bunker. We know how to hit the shot, but we got to catch it perfect. So I'm not going to take my chances on hitting 0-0 in Las Vegas very often. I'm going to try to stay out of it. So I might lay up short of it or really try to fly it on it or play way away from it to stay out of it, even though I know how to hit the shot. The same thing for a 50, 60-yard wedge shot. Because you're not able to make a completely full swing on those, again, you've got to catch it dead perfect, and that's different than the technique from a sand shot around the green. That's more of a splash shot around the greens, but now you're making a fuller swing. But your percentages of pulling off are way slim, so you got to be able to weigh the odds. What can I really pull this off, and how well what are my expectations on the shot? I've got a 50-50 chance of pulling it off. Well, that's not even the same as Vegas on 0-0. So I'm going to catch something good, but I'm going to miss hit more often than not. So the main thing is just stay out of them. Use your course management ahead of time. I don't want to have a 50 or 60-yard bunker shot. I don't want to be in the fairway bunker. I'm going to do everything I can to stay out of those. Done.
You know, and that goes into really what I wanted for us to talk about next. And I put down here 5 tips. You don't have to obviously give us 5, but really to navigate any round. And course management, obviously, I think is front and center. Just as you pointed out, you have to understand what your percentages of executing any given shot, whether it be out of a bunker or not. And I think this is where a lot of amateurs fail, is they spend so much time on trying to perfect, hitting the perfect shot, but then when they get out in the golf course, they don't know how to put the shots together in order to, reduce their score. So talk a little bit of when you're talking with a student, whether it be at boot camp, Alan, or out in a lesson, and you're trying to help them understand how to navigate around the course, what are some of the things that you advise them?
Well, the first thing, when I saw that question on there, I've had 5 answers, and they're all the same. Focus, 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 and focus. Because what happens is people get on the golf course and they just start walking up and whacking. It's kind of like getting in a car, and you don't even know where the road is. You know how to drive the car, but you don't even know where the road is. You have no idea where you're trying to go, and you have no idea how to get there. Okay, so you got to be able to lay out a plan somewhat, where you want to go, how you're going to get there, and what's the best and most efficient way to get there. The driving of the car is the easiest part. Now, you need to know how to drive a car. Okay, and that's what we work on the range, how to drive the car or swing a golf club. But once you know how to do that to some level of skill, then it's a matter of getting out there and being able to know where you're going, how you're going to get there, what's the best way. So course management, like when I play the tour, we'd go out and look at a hole and say, I mean, you've heard on TV sometimes that this hole doesn't suit their eye. It means they can look at it and say, you know, that my normal shot pattern doesn't play for this hole. If I'm a left to right player and it's a dog leg right to left, it may not suit my eye, so I have to figure out a way to navigate that, but not try to be as aggressive as somebody that the hole might suit their eye. If they were hit a big hook and it's a right to left dog leg, they might be able to try to get it around there. But if it doesn't, you're not that kind of player, you got to say, what's the smart way? What's the best way I can get my car there and not have an accident and be safe and just go on to the next hole? Now, if I'm comfortable that no police out of the road and it's a straightaway, I might be able to go a little faster and get away with something. But I have to be careful because you never know when that airplane might be over you, too, watching your speed as you go along. In other words, what's the options that I have within the game that I do have and the way the golf hole is designed? You know, same thing. We did a thing with the Nike golf camp way back when I was teaching some of those years ago. And we had a bunch of kids in a room. And my friend Bob Winters put a slide up on a screen and said, what is the first thing you see when you look at this slide? And it was a hole with a lot of water around the green, kind of like 17 at TPC, but longer. And the difference was behind the green they had a big mound and a couple of sand traps. And it was a lot bigger green. And the first thing every kid said they saw, we had to write it down. The first thing almost every kid saw was the water. I don't want to go in the water. I don't want to go in the water. And he said, Alan, what did you see on this hole? And I said, well, I see those bunkers, not fairway, but I see those bunkers and mound behind the green. He said, why do you see that? I said, because that's a safe place to miss it. All they saw was the water. No, I don't want to go in the water. That's where I don't want to be. And what my visual is where do I want to miss it to? Okay, well, that's course management. You know, what do you learn? And you have to learn to do that. What do you learn? Where do I want to miss this shot? Because I know Cindy said on the air a lot of times, you know, it's not – golf is a game of good misses, not your best shots. You know, he who misses it best wins. So I want to be able – where's a safe place to play this shot? Well, same as driving the car. Where's the safest road for me to go? I can go these back roads, but I might get lost. Where's the safest place for me to go? So that's all course management, but most people don't do that, and that goes back to focus. Are you just walking up and whacking a ball and hope it goes where you want it to go, or did you plan on what the hole looked like before you got up there? And a lot of that stuff you can do ahead of time, especially if you've played a golf course before, or you have the yardage book, you know, the layout of the hole. Kind of look at it and say, where am I going to be going? Or today's go, you can go on the internet and look at the 18 holes on a golf course and kind of plan ahead for tomorrow. Where do you want to play the hole, and how's it best suited you to play? That, to me, is the biggest thing that people don't do. They have no idea where they're trying to go and how they're going to get there.
Yeah, and you can identify that very easily when you watch people, how they warm up and how they practice, you know, especially in a longer practice session, if they're just sort of raking and hitting balls and not really with any sort of purpose out there or plan. I mean, even though you're on the driving range, you can pretend and imagine that you're playing specific holes and sort of instill that course management into your practice routine. And a lot of people that don't, and when they get out to the golf course, Alan, you know as well as I do that they don't have a plan. That's the problem, is they don't prepare, they don't have a plan. Cindy, I know we've got a lot of questions left. We'll have to have Alan come back again, but any final question or thoughts that you want to talk with Alan?
No, I'm just glad that I asked him to marry me so I could get so much smarter. I love you, honey.
Well,
I love you too. Everybody, please stay safe. The world, especially the golf world, will probably never be the same again. Let's make the best of what we can out of this problem we have going on right now in the world.
I agree. Well, Alan, thank you very, very much for coming on and joining us this morning, and we will definitely have you back on a little bit later in the season, and we'll have to continue on with some of the questions. But thank you very much, and you guys be safe, and we appreciate you coming on and joining us this morning and sharing some very valuable insight into the game. So on behalf of Cindy Miller, I'm Ted Odorico. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning on the Women of Golf. God bless, and we will see you next week right here on the Women of Golf. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Cindy.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening this morning to the Women of Golf Show. Tune in live each week by visiting blogtalkradio.com Facebook.com/Women of Golf, or on any of these social media platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, TalkStream Live, and of course Spotify. If you can't join us live, check out our on-demand section for previously aired broadcasts. To get updates for future shows and upcoming guests, you can follow us on Facebook at Women of Golf. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO and Cindy at Cindy Miller Golf. Please remember to join us next week on the Women of Golf Show. See you next time. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.